out which product you want to sell. You found a factory to sell it at. Now, how do you actually sell it to people on Amazon? That's what we're going to talk about in this module, is building your listing. Remember, your listing is your window to the world. It's your brochure on Amazon for people to actually discover your product, learn all about it, and hopefully add it to the cart and check out and buy it. And how you build this listing can make all the world of difference in your discoverability and your sales and how well you do. So what I want to do right now is I'm going to go through some of the key things when it comes to what are the key components of a listing, what are some of the key things that you need to be thinking about when you're building this listing, and how can you optimize it for your best chances of conversion and of success. You always want to keep your customers' needs in mind when you're building your listing. You know your product really well, but you have to think of it objectively from someone that's never heard of you. You know your product inside out. You've played with it. You've held it. You've smelled it. You've touched it. You've used it. You've been dealing with a factory. You're intimately aware of it, but you have to remember that your customer is not. You have to introduce them to this brand new thing that they know nothing about, and they may have a totally different perspective on what it is based on what you write or based on what you show in the photos. And so it's critical that you find this balance between what your customer is expecting, but at the same time as doing that, you have to play to Amazon, because Amazon has an algorithm called the A9, and that stands for A's for Amazon. And then the 9, there's a lot of lore about how this came to be, but it's a special group of people, data scientists, that determine what shows up on Amazon. When you type in dog bowl, what is actually going to show up on the word dog bowl, and how you're going to be represented. And it's a very complicated algorithm. It takes into effect hundreds and hundreds of different factors in determining where you rank. And if you don't rank in the top page of results for the word dog bowl, for example, you're probably not going to sell very many dog bowls. Very few people go to page 2 or page 3 on Amazon of the results. Most sales, 70 to 80% of the sales are happening on page 1. And in fact, most of the sales are happening in the top 3 to 5 listings that show at the first 3 to 5 results is where most of it's happening. There's 2 types of results. There's organic results, which means that Amazon's just naturally putting you there at no charge based on what's in your listing. And that's what you want to optimize here, what we're going to be talking about, so that you can boost up and get in those organic without having to pay for it results. Or you can pay for the results, which is sponsored ads. And Amazon will show you in a higher position, but they're going to charge you for that if someone clicks it. And it's not just based on who will pay the most. It's also based on which ones will convert the most. It's not just about making money on the advertising. It's also making money on the sale and making sure the customer gets what they want. So with that in mind, you've got to market towards the A9. You got to create your listing with the A9 in mind too. So you got to market to a human in your listing, and you got to market to a machine in your listing. So you got to balance those two, and finding that perfect balance sometimes can be a tightrope act. It can be a little bit challenging, especially now with the impact of AI. AI is something that Amazon is getting heavier and heavier involved in. Depending on when you're watching this, it will depend on what level they're at. They've been using versions of AI for years, but with the AI craze that began in late 2022 and continued into 2023 and into 2024, it took Amazon until about 2024 to actually start making some major visible changes in the way they do AI. And that's from the way they're analyzing reviews and delivering that to the customer. Instead of showing them all the reviews, they're taking a summary of them. Instead of showing all the questions and answers, they're taking a summary of them. And then Amazon is messing around with listings. Now, technically, Amazon owns your listing. If you look at the terms of service on Amazon, when you put something up on Amazon, you are basically giving them the rights. Now, you may own the picture and you own the products, but you're giving them the rights to control that page. They give you a lot of control as a third-party seller, which is awesome, but they also limit that control to some degree too. And with AI, a lot of times Amazon thinks they know better than you know, and sometimes that's true. A lot of times it's not. So there's a lot of things changing right now in the way you actually create a listing. And the AI is sometimes even rewriting your listing. You'll put something up and the AI, Amazon's saying, no, we think there's a better way to do this. And you may disagree with that. But there's ways to influence the listing and to revert those changes. But you need to understand the core things of listings. So to create a listing, you can do it 2 ways. You can do what's called a flat file, which is basically an Excel document that has a bunch of fields in it. As you can download from the category, you can do a search for Amazon Seller Central flat files, and every category has its own flat file. So the beauty category is different than the pet category. It's different than the sports category. And they're basically complicated Excel spreadsheets. And these are great for if you're uploading a lot of products. If you got 100 different products that you're selling, so you don't have to manually do them one by one, you can put them all in this spreadsheet and upload all the information. Or sometimes they're great for uploading individual information to fix a problem, for example, on a listing. And Amazon also has what's called a GUI, or GUI, graphical user interface, where you can just go into Seller Central and you just do it through a browser. Those don't show you everything. The flat files have every little field, every little option in it. And so they can be very valuable, but they can also be very confusing to people because they can be overwhelming. But if you can master flat files to upload your products, that's the best way, because you can add additional keywords, additional data that's not in the web browser version. But in the beginning, on your first product, starting with the web browser version of Seller Central, as long as the advanced tab is clicked, you should be good. There are people that specialize in flat files out there, so if you have trouble with it or you want to learn, there's things you can Google and you can find on how to actually do flat files. They can be very, very powerful. The most important thing on your listing is the title. The title is crucial, and really, when you've done your keyword research, which we show you how to do in Magnet and some of the other tools, once you've figured out what keywords you're going to be really zeroing in on that are relevant to your product, that's where you're going to want to try to get those into your title, because that's where Amazon, at least right now, and this can always change, is they put a lot of emphasis on that. With AI, they're looking at more than just the title. They're also looking at the bullet points. They're looking at your description. They're looking at the composition of your photos, how things are arranged in your photo. Is your photo a lifestyle photo with someone running on a trail, or are they working out in a gym? That changes the context of things and how they might show you based on different customer patterns. They're looking at reviews and other comparisons using AI, and it's getting a little bit complicated. But the only thing you can do is just make the best listing possible to reach that avatar and understand your market. So, for example, if you're really targeted, if you know that your customer avatar are people that like to run on a trail with their dog, you need to make sure that in your lifestyle photos, one of those pictures is people running on a trail with a dog, holding your product. Maybe it's a leash or whatever it is. Rather than people walking on a busy city street, if that's not your product, because AI is going to look at that image, and it's going to determine, based on other things that these people have bought, that if your dog is running on a trail, it knows you're an outdoor person, and they know that Kevin, who's bought other things for running or hiking on a trail, is probably going to like this leash better because of this picture versus another listing that has a picture of a dog walking in a city in the middle of New York or something on the sidewalk. So little things like that matter. And so you got to start paying attention and start selling to the AI as well. So the other thing that's important besides what's in your title is the price, obviously, and your images. People on Amazon eat with their eyes first. They buy photos, not products. So most people will not read every word on your listing. A lot of the words that you do in your bullet points and your description and your title, they're there for the algorithm, for A9 to figure out what the heck is this and try to make sense out of it. Most people will not, they might skim it, but unless there's technical details, the vast majority of people don't read that stuff. They're going to look at your price, your title, your price, and your pictures. Those are the three most important things that you need to focus on. And don't skimp here. You can use AI. Amazon has some AI tools that help you with creating pictures. But just be careful that they don't look too cheesy. The more real you can make them look, there's some advanced AI tools that can do a dadgum good job. It's okay to use those, but make sure your imagery is on point, and if you can, tell a story in your imagery. The other thing that's important are your bullet points. The bullet points are little things with a little circle by them. It's like the short little nuggets of information. Those are typically about 200 to 250 characters. You don't want to make those too long. Make them skimmable, and make them to the point. That's why they're called bullet points. But make them succinct, and don't waste words there. Put some of your other keywords that you're trying to target in there that help with this relevance and help the AI understand what your product is. That's always good. You don't have to repeat stuff over and over. Just putting something in there once. Amazon can put 2 and 2 together. They can figure out that the Empire State Building is a tall building, for example. You don't have to say the tall building, the Empire State Building. They can use semantics to actually figure this kind of stuff out, but you want to put enough in there to guide them in the right direction so that they hopefully show it to the right customers. So you have your bullet points, you have your description, which can be, it's a written, that's where you can a lot of times put technical details. You can put different stuff into the description. If you have A+ content, which is that extra section, if you're brand registered, we talked about in an earlier module, it will take place of the description, so it won't show you that description. It will show the additional pictures and images and stuff instead. But the description is still there. It's still used by the algorithm to actually index you. So it's still important to have data filled in there, even though it's not showing up. Then there's also like we said earlier, the back end. These are the keywords that don't appear to the public on your page, but they're things that make a difference. It could be styles or materials, or it could be Spanish words that aren't in your listing, or alternate spellings of things, or synonyms for deals, things like that. There are additional words, keywords that aren't in your listing. You don't need to repeat the words that are in your main listing into the back end keywords. So as long as, if you got a list of 100 words and you're using Helium-10 to actually make sure you've covered all the bases of all your words, and you should be, like Bradley showed you, you should actually be using that to make sure you've got every phrase and every word in there. And as long as you've done that, you're good. And the ones that just don't fit and don't make sense to put in the bullet points or description or title, that's where you can put those into the back end. And that'll help you with your relevance, to help the A9 and the AI figure out what you're doing. You can also set up variations. Variations are when you have multiples of a size or multiples of a color. So if you have makeup mirrors and there's 4 different colors, there's rose gold, red, black, and white, you can set up what's called a parent listing. So that's like the master listing for the listing. And then underneath that, there's children. So the black would be a child, the gold, rose gold would be a child, the white would be a child, and the red would be a child. And so each of those can have the same or similar information in the back end. I like to actually make them a little bit different, but they all kind of tie together. So when someone's on one page, they can see the different options there, but you don't know, are they going to discover you based on the red one? And then, or they discover you based on the gold one. So you could change things in the way they search and optimize there. That can really help you out on ranking. So some people are always like, should I make my variations standalone, which means each individual ASIN by themselves, so that if I type in Kevin King's makeup mirror, there's 4 different options that show up on the page: a red one, a gold one, a black one, and a white one. Do I do it as a variation where it's just one listing, and when I click into it, then there's the different color options? There's 2 different schools of thought on that. One of them takes up a little bit more real estate, but it's a little bit harder to rank them all. The other one is very good at cross-selling. So if you can get somebody to come in on the gold version because it's ranking better for whatever reason, but they really want a red one, and they see that you have a red one, they'll go ahead and buy the red one. So you guys have to test on that to see which one is right. When you're creating a listing, you always want to, this is a mistake a lot of people make, is they show the features of the product instead of the benefits. So they'll say, this spatula has a heat-resistant handle or something like that. That's a feature. You want to show the why. What's the benefit of having this? This handle will keep your hand from burning up to 720 degrees. That's a why. Your hand will not burn up to 720 degrees. Instead of, it has a heat-resistant. So you want to be specific and say, what's the benefit for the customer, not the feature of the product. Sell the sizzle, not the steak. And that's very important. A lot of people get that wrong when they're writing their bullet points and they're writing their listing. You can even put the why in the title, and that will help you quite a bit as well. Speaking of writing titles, how can you write a killer title? So the best way to write killer titles is focus on 3 to 5 of the main, most relevant keywords for your product. What are the people going to be searching for or typing in? Then you want to put those in exact phrase order. So the exact order that the tools like Helium-10 show you, you want to put those in the exact order in the title. And sometimes you can put them back to back and get creative with the way you organize words. But if you can have them in the exact phrase order, that's even better. Amazon will mix and match. So if the words are spread out in the title, they'll put 2 things together. So if it's slow feed, dog bowl, large, the fact the word dog bowl and large is in there, they'll put dog bowl large together and create a phrase out of it, even though they're not next to each other. But the main ones, you want to have them next to each other in phrase order. So if I was going after dog bowl large as a keyword, I would want to have those in exact order in my title and work the title to be that way. From left to right is the most important. So whatever's on the left-hand side carries a little bit more weight than what's at the end of the title. You want to avoid flagged words, like the word, there's a whole list of these. You can Google them or look on Seller Central. There's words like free or guarantee or warranty or Black Friday sale or stuff like that you can't put in your title. Don't use superlative fluffy words. Those are not good. Try to get a why in your title if you can. If you can word it in such a way as to why this product is better or why this is something that your avatar should be buying and using, that's good. Titles are typically 50 to 200 characters. Some categories Amazon limits it, and it may say it's unlimited, but they actually don't limit it. But you want to keep them between 50 and 200 characters. Most top-selling items are not keyword stuffed. They're shorter titles. Be careful of where it truncates. Depending on a mobile device, a small mobile device versus a large mobile device versus an iPad versus a desktop computer versus a laptop, words will truncate depending on the size of the screen. So keep that in mind when you're creating them. Usually it's at 37 characters. You want to make sure there's a nice break. 67, 97 characters, there's a nice break, and so that it either leads them on, makes them want to see more, or has a concise message within that. If in the title you can include sizing if you want to. Make sure you say this the large size or extra large size or whatever it is. Try to be positive, include positive terms. If you need help, you can get a copywriter. There's plenty of people in the space. You can look in the hub.helium10.com, probably find some copywriters. If you're not good with the English language, some AI tools will help you create listings. Amazon even has their own. Helium 10 has some stuff. There's tools out there that will help you write the listing. Just make sure it sounds human and sounds good. So if you're not a natural English speaker, you can use some of those tools. And remember, you need to write for the AI. This is evolving and changing. So make sure you check out some of the monthly trainings that we do here for Freedom Ticket, where we'll keep you up to date on what's the latest stuff happening when it comes to building listings and when it comes to what the AI is doing, because it's evolving rapidly right now, and there's a lot of changes happening. And so we'll keep you up to date on that. Another thing is you might hear someone say something about the canonical URL. The canonical URL is a URL that shows up in Google and has keywords in it. So Google gives extra weight to ranking if the keywords are in the URL string. So if I type in amazon.com/dp/x372623, that doesn't have as much weight as if the link is amazon.com/dp slow feed dog bowl. And that goes to the same page. They both go to the same place. Because those keywords are in the title, Google gives that, and other search engines give that a little bit extra weight. So that's something that you want to make sure that that canonical has the right keywords in it. And the way you do that is by controlling the first 5 words, of your title, and then put a dash or a colon there. And those words will typically show up in the canonical. That's an important thing to look at too, is the canonical URL for ranking outside. It's not going to affect you on Amazon, but for ranking outside of Amazon. Now, your bullet points and descriptions are also pretty important. They're not as important as the title or your images, but they would be next. They're crucial for relevance, to make sure you're relevant and make sure the AI is understanding what is this product. You typically get 5 to 11 bullet points depending on your category, and you want to fill each one of those out. Make sure you don't leave anything blank. These would be your second level keywords. Your top 3 or 5 are in your title that you're really super targeting and that you really love to rank on and hopefully make most of your sales. The second level would be in your description and bullet points. The first 3 bullet points are the most important, because sometimes Amazon doesn't show all the bullet points, and sometimes they only they figure you kind of put the stuff in order, and by you get to the 5th or 6th one, you're just trying to fill up space. So the A9 actually prioritizes the top 3. So the top 3 have a little bit more weight and credence. So make sure your best benefits, your best whys are in those top 3 for either truncating purposes if they don't show them all, or on mobile. Some mobile devices don't show all the bullet points. You got to click the little button to see more. And then Amazon gives those extra weight as well. Avoid repetition of keywords, so don't repeat yourself between them. Just say things one time. It's good enough. Try to create an emotional connection if you can in your writing. That's if you can create some sort of emotional connection to your customer, it can go a long ways in empathy and putting yourself in their shoes and making you feel like, hey, this product is actually for me. They're not talking at me, they're talking to me. There's a big difference in talking at somebody and talking to somebody. And so those are important things in the writing and in the style that can make a huge difference. You can also ask rhetorical questions. How would you feel if you had a product that did this, and your product is a solution? Remember, all products, it's problem solution. So when you're writing copy, what problem does your product solve? So if you can emphasize that in the copy, even with rhetorical questions, what's the problem, and then here, I'm the solution to your problem. And if you can understand by reading reviews or understanding your customer base and understanding your avatar, these are the problems they're trying to solve with your product. You can go miles with your copy and with your relevance and with the AI and the A9, understanding what you're trying to do. The first 200 characters, or like I said, those first 3 bullet points or the first 200 characters are super critical. If you have technical stuff, put that in the description. Or there's some other fields on Amazon where you can put the technical stuff, the fabric, the batteries, and all that kind of stuff. Fill as much of those fields out as you can in the back end. The back end is super important. A lot of people leave a lot of these things blank, but you want to fill out every little thing that you can. Even if it doesn't have batteries, put if anything to deal with fabric or sizing or country of origin or any kind of little features. Every category is different, what they show there, but you want to fill out as many as you can. If you're not sure what to put there, you can download the flat files, like I mentioned earlier, and they have, in the flat files, they have one of the tabs is like a directory of suggested words or acceptable words, and you can use some of those words and you can fill in if you're not sure what to put in some of the fields. Always make sure you use relevant words in the back end. That's where you're going to put all the third level keywords, the keywords that didn't fit in your writing, didn't make sense to put there, or their alternate spell. Amazon will fix for most spellings, but maybe you have some weird alternate spellings or cultural differences, spellings that the A9 or the algorithm might not pick up. Or in the U.S., there's a lot of people searching in Spanish. You can put Spanish keywords in the backside. So just don't repeat what's in the bullet points or in the title. That's you want to make sure everything is unique. You want to avoid any kind of restricted words like CBD or marijuana, brand names. If you got to be careful putting Nike or something like that. If you're selling a product that's for a brand name, you have to make sure it looks like it's not for that name. So like if you're selling an Apple charging dock, you cannot say on Amazon, this is an Apple charging dock. The words in that order, it makes it look like it's made by Apple. But you can say charging dock for Apple phones or something along those lines, where you got to make sure that the emphasis is not on this doesn't appear to be a product made for that company. It's a product that's compatible with that company. So using a brand name in that way is okay, but just stuffing your listing with brand names to try to piggyback on other people is probably not going to do well for you. It's probably going to get you penalized in the A9 algorithm. You also want to make sure you fill in all the back-end stuff, the little fields like the colors, the materials, all those little fields. Make sure you fill that in. You might see sometimes there's a field called platinum keywords or some strange stuff. You just leave those blank. Those are some old legacy stuff for old school sellers that's not really even used anymore. So putting something in there is not going to make any difference. So you're just going to leave those blank. You also want to make sure, depending on where you're selling, your listing is localized. So if you're selling in the U.S. and then you take the same product and sell it in the U.K., even though English is the same language, there's lots of words that are completely different. What we call diapers in the U.S. are called nappies in the U.K. Or what we call different things. The trunk of a car in the U.S. is the boot in the U.K. And there's lots of little cultural differences like that. Fries in the U.S. or chips in the U.K. So you got to make sure you accommodate those differences. Or if you're selling from internationally into the U.S., make sure you understand U.S. jargon. And you're not putting it in the British English jargon or the Australian English jargon. You're making sure you have it completely dialed in. There's AI tools that you can use that will help you analyze your keywords and help you analyze your listing and help you maybe give you some suggestions and improve that. Amazon has some. They're okay. They'll probably get better in time, but I like some of the third-party tools. Helium 10 has some stuff that you can use that will help you on that. When it comes to translation, if you're doing translations, either for other languages or maybe English is not your first language and you're translating to English. Be careful with the human versus machine translation. You always want someone that's native to that language to check it for you. Even AI, as good a job as it can do, it still can mess some stuff up. So always have a local person that's fluent as their first language check something for you. If you don't have somebody, you can find somebody on Fiverr, or you can find somebody that'll do that cheap for 10, 20 bucks and read it. Always be, translations also, when you do stuff, some things can turn offensive. Some words in certain languages mean something else in another language. So you got to be careful along those lines too, or you can turn people off. You go into the German markets, Germans like things to be straightforward and technical. Don't bullshit, no fluff. I just want to know, these are the facts, this is what it does. In the U.S. market, you can get a little bit more fluffy. You can get a little bit more, this is the most beautiful product or something. In the German market, you don't say things like that. So make sure you do that localization. That goes to the packaging as well. So your packaging needs to be localized, and your instruction manuals, your warranty card, everything needs to be localized for that area. There's companies out there, if you're expanding on Amazon or you're going to other markets, there's companies out there like Yana's companies, like YLT Translations, that will actually do translation stuff for you and help you go back in between. Or if English is not your first language, you want to have your AI written stuff checked. She can do that kind of stuff for you as well. You also want to make sure if you're selling internationally, there's an impact of global reviews. So if you get reviews in one marketplace, until you get a certain number of reviews in another marketplace, those reviews will carry over. So sometimes in the U.S. marketplace, you'll see a product that's recently launched in the U.S. has no reviews, but it might say reviews from other marketplaces, and they've been selling it in Spain. And so those reviews will come in until you hit a certain threshold in the U.S. market, and then those will disappear. But Amazon will use stuff like that as well to help you. If you're going to go international, there's companies that can help you, like Avast, that can help you with all the regulations, all the compliance issues, all the VAT and tax issues, all the setup, the logistics issues. So it's AVASK, Avast. So if you have issues where you're thinking about expanding, they're one of the top companies, one of the best companies that can help you in that way. They're like an authorized partner with Helium 10 and with Amazon one of their preferred ones. So that's a really good company to use if you are going that route. You also want to make sure that, there's a lot of marketplaces out there where there's not as much competition. The United States has the most competition by far. It's the biggest market. But you go into markets like Japan, there's a language issue, so a lot of people are afraid to go into Japan. But in Japan, you look up yoga mats, there's not a whole lot of yoga mats showing up on Amazon. Whereas you look up yoga mats on Amazon in the U.S., there's a crazy number of competition. So sometimes it's easier to compete in some of these foreign markets. So if that's something that you're willing to do, and maybe it's your local market, start there and then come into the U.S. You can have a major advantage. Amazon's a huge ecosystem. The U.S., obviously, like I said, it's the biggest marketplace, but the U.K., Germany, Japan are all really big as well. And then you have the next tier down, Australia, Spain, France, Italy, Netherlands. Then you have, the UAE. Amazon's expanding into South America. You have Mexico, Canada. Canada alone, for U.S. sellers, if you're going to expand your listing, you can port it over. You can do what's called the North American, it's like a North American unified account. So that gives you Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So you can sell into all three of those off of one Seller Central account. But Mexico might add a little bit to your sales, but Canada can add 5 to 10%. So whatever you're doing in the United States, it's pretty easy. English is widely spoken in most parts of Canada. So it's pretty easy to actually, and it's a very similar culture, to port your listing over to Canada and actually sell and add 5 to 10% to your bottom line just by selling in Canada. So if you're selling in the North American marketplace, Amazon has something called remote fulfillment with FBA, which allows you to sell in Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. And that can be a great option to expand a little bit. Mexico is probably not going to add too much to most people's marketplace. It's growing. It might be worth dabbling in, but Canada is one that you should actually look at. It can add 5 to 10%. Most people, it's a very similar culture. Canada is most people speak English throughout most of Canada. And it's easy to get in there. So those are some things that you can look at pretty easily to do as well. Now, again, remember that the quality of your images is critical. We talked about the bullet points and your title and all the written part, but people eat with their eyes first, and people buy photos. don't skimp on your images. There are companies out there like AMZ One Step. There's several others you can find in the directory at hub.helium10.com that will help you create quality images. You can spend a lot of money on professional photography. You might be able to use some of the AI tools from Amazon or some of the other tools that are out there to maybe create some images. There's some pretty powerful stuff that can do some cool things, but just make sure it looks good. It doesn't look AI generated. It's got the shadows in the right place. Everybody's got all 5 fingers. Have 7 fingers on their hand and all that kind of stuff. That AI, it's getting better over time, and it's probably going to get to the point where you can pretty much do anything you want. And there's some cool stuff that will create videos, but put some time and effort into your imagery and the way you position things and what you choose specifically to put in your imagery, the backgrounds and the lifestyle pictures and the scenes that people are in can make a huge difference. You also want to try to avoid using cheap or stock photos. If you're using stock photos, you can use stock photos, pieces of them, or maybe as part of a background or something, but be careful of using just stock photos. Be careful of people on Fiverr that will do something cheap and the shadows, they'll take your product and stick it on the kitchen counter and the shadows aren't right. It just looks fake. It just looks dropped in. That's just a turn off to most people. So make sure it looks real. There's 3D imagery like Fade Visuals and stuff will do 3D imagery for you. That's pretty cool, where they create wireframes and then they'll create a whole 3D thing. There's AI tools that will do a lot of this kind of stuff. Amazon has some of their tools. They're getting better and better and better. So take advantage of that and spend time on your images. Do testing. Through PickFu with the audience tab on Helium 10, you can test images. So create a bunch, especially with AI now, you can create 20 different images and put them up for testing of Amazon buyers through the audience tab on Helium 10 with using PickFu and determine this is the one that resonates the most with the buyers. You do all kinds of split testing. Amazon will allow you to split test images live in real time. So maybe you get down to the best 2 or 3 on PickFu and they're all close, and then run all 3 of them on Amazon and do, if you're brand registered, you can do split testing where Amazon will randomly show the image for a period of time and then tell you this one converted at 27%, this one converted at 12%, and then run with the one that works. All those kinds of things are important to do. Don't just stick something up and leave it and like, okay, I'm done. Always be trying to improve and to make it better. The images have to justify the price. So if your price is a little bit higher, your imagery has to justify that price. An example I give is I sold these dog treats, like I told, the bully sticks. I think I mentioned in one of the earlier modules where most people are selling 30 bully sticks for $30 in a plastic bag with a label. I sold 5 of mine in a cigar-looking box. They're nicer, they're bigger, they're thicker treats, but I sold those for $49 to $54. How did I justify that price? I justified it with images. So I created images I did cartoons of like before and after. And so the cartoon would be like, here's a bunch of dogs in a car driving through a McDonald's drive-through, and the menu says dollar menu items and all cheap stuff. And it would contrast with a split screen in the pictures, and the other one would be a dog sitting around a table with another dog, waiter D, with a little tray with a bow tie, and he's bringing the stuff, and it's like the nicest steakhouse in town. That connotates an image in the customer's mind. That's storytelling. And then I would show stuff like, here's the machine. The other ones are made on a machine. I'd show a nasty machine spitting out these treats. It just looks nasty. And then I would contrast that with me, with a chef, with a little chef's hat sitting in a nice kitchen, like you'd see on a chef's show, with a carving knife, just carving the stuff. Mine is that quality. So that type of stuff and those kinds of comparisons can work good. Infographics are great, where you have infographics and you have a picture and you're doing call-outs. There's little arrows pointing, built with titanium steel, where you can show. The Huel does this really well. I did a feature in my newsletter a while back on Billion Dollar Sellers newsletter showing you how Huel points out their positives and points out the competition's negatives. They don't call them by name, but they'll say, us 20 grams of protein, them 12 grams of protein. Us, X, Y, Z vitamins, them 1 vitamin. So showing comparisons like that can do really good as well in your imagery. Lifestyle pictures are people showing the product in use. People like to see, they like to imagine themselves, how would I imagine myself using this product? How am I going to feel? If I see somebody sitting on their couch eating popcorn, having a good time watching a movie because I've got some sort of cool popcorn container I'm selling and doesn't, it drips the butter down the side so it doesn't make a mess on my hands, doesn't get grease on the couch, and everybody's happy. I'm like, I can envision myself being that. So try to create your images to allow your customer to transport themselves into it. And Amazon even has tools now where you can do drop-ins. So, if I'm buying a chair on Amazon, I can actually drop that into my room. I can take a picture on my phone and like drop it into the scene and kind of get an idea of how it looks. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do when you're creating pictures, whether you're doing prompting with AI or you're giving it to a photographer. Be very specific and create FPOs. Be very specific in what you want. So a lot of times if I'm trying to come up with ideas, I'll take tear sheets, and these tear sheets are like from other magazines or other good photos, and I'll put those and say I want something like this, but modify this part of it. Everything, the brain processes visual information fast. So you make sure that you don't clutter your photos. Put them short to the point. Don't put too much stuff or too many words in your photos. Use vibrant colors in your images, things that'll stand out, things that'll draw the attention. When think about your main image, how it's sitting on the page, how it's positioned, like turning it like a little bit at an angle might make it stand out around everybody else. So take a look at all your other competitors on that keyword and how are their listings positioned. They're all facing left, face yours right. Maybe put it upside down on purpose, or put some sort of colored band across the label that says new and improved, or whatever it is, or 20 grams protein. Even though it might not be on your actual product, just put a little label or something in there. Those things can really, really help if you highlight those key features in your packaging. Like I said, infographics are awesome and great to use. Make sure they're concise and good. Make sure your images are large. You want to make sure that Amazon says 1,000, I think it's 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. I would actually go 3,000 by 3,000 or even 5,000 by 5,000. The higher the quality, the better. They have a limit, I think it's 10 megabytes on what you can upload, but the higher the quality, the better. Make sure everything is mobile optimized. So think of people, about 70 to 80% of the people shot first on their phone. So make sure the pictures, everything is filling the frame. It's not going to be little, and there's a lot of white space around it. Make sure you're filling the frame. And then use the testing. Amazon testing, the test images, constantly be testing, constantly be trying to improving. If you do that, you're going to have some pretty good chances for succeeding and creating a listing that just blows everybody out of the park, has high conversions, and makes you a lot of money.